welcome back to my channel. It's Mary here from Layers of Chic. So today's video is part 2 of the contract strategy for bloggers. If you haven't seen the first video, I would definitely start from the first video, and the first video talks all about how to determine your rate and what to charge for an Instagram post. So if you want to know that, be sure to go to the first video, and then today's video is the second part in terms of contract negotiations with brands. And today's video is going to focus fully on understanding the campaign deliverables and timing. So in order to successfully negotiate a contract, you have to make sure that you're fully understanding everything that the campaign is requiring. So let's go ahead and get into it. The next section is probably the most important section, and that is you need to fully understand the deliverables for a campaign before you give the brand your rate. So when a brand reaches out and they ask you for your rate, if you feel like you have any questions or you don't have the specifics on what are the campaign guidelines, what is the timing for the campaign, exactly how many posts are they requiring, do they require pre-approval, all of those things you actually should know before you give your rate, because your rate can change based on all of these factors. But this is one thing that I feel like a lot of bloggers trip themselves up over, is that when a brand reaches out, they immediately give the brand their rate, and then the brand agrees to the rate, but then the brand then starts telling you all of the campaign requirements and all the stipulations that you weren't aware of before that actually probably could have increased your rate, but now that you've already agreed to a rate with the brand, so now it's too late. So my biggest piece of advice is that always make sure to fully understand everything that the campaign requires before even giving your rate. So I'm sure you're wondering, okay, what are the campaign requirements I should be considering? Like, how can there be that many requirements? Well, let me tell you guys something. Based on my experience, there can be so many little things that can lead to increased time, increased cost, and therefore an increased rate. So I'm gonna go through them one by one. So the first thing to consider is, what is the nature of the campaign? So for example, I'm primarily a fashion blogger, so I post mainly outfit pictures on my Instagram. So when a beauty brand reaches out to me and the campaign requirements include wanting a close-up detailed shot of the beauty product, for me, this is not as organic for me, and so I usually tend to charge more for these types of campaigns. The reason for this is because this is not my usual aesthetic. Like, I don't typically feature close-up beauty products. So it would actually require more time and effort on my end to make sure that this photo fits into my feed and is still something that my audience will respond to. So because I'm a fashion blogger, when a beauty brand reaches out, I want to make sure that the photo still fits really, really well into my feed, but at the same time, still meets all of the campaign requirements. And typically what this means is that it's gonna take me longer and more effort to make sure that all of this is achieved. In addition, because I'm a fashion blogger and I typically post outfit pictures, a beauty campaign actually requires a completely different shoot and setup. So for me, I am not going to simply take this product and hold it in my outfit of the day and take that photo and call it a day, because I do want to make sure that this photo actually is an effective display of the product. When I take on a beauty campaign, I know that it's going to be an entirely separate shoot, an entirely separate setup. So these are already two things that are going to cause my rate to go up, because when it's an entirely separate shoot, I'm paying my photographer for a whole other shoot, and it's a whole other setup. So that means that this is probably on a different shoot day. I'm getting ready for that day, going to the shoot location, setting up the shoot. So it's not as simple as sliding it into my existing outfit photos. So you guys might be thinking that this all sounds great, but how do I actually execute this when it comes to negotiating? So I'm actually gonna show you guys an example that I wrote to a beauty brand when they reached out, where I actually list out all the reasons why I'm charging more for this campaign. And another one of my biggest pieces of advice is to be honest and be transparent with the brand. So in this email, I actually tell the brand that this is higher than my usual rate, but here are the reasons why. And the reason I did that is because this rate is higher than my usual rate, and it's also higher than the industry average. So I don't want the brand to think that I'm just pulling a number out of thin air for no reason. I want them to fully understand why I'm charging more, so that they don't think that I'm trying to take advantage of them or just try to get more money from them. So that's why, for me, I always think it's better to be transparent and to explain more rather than less to a brand. So I'm gonna go through this email that I wrote to this brand and all the reasons I listed out. So I'm gonna pull up the email here. So as you guys can see, here in the email I'm saying, to be transparent, this is higher than my usual standard rate based on the following requirements that make this not a standard campaign. And here I'm explaining to her that because of these specific campaign requirements, this is why I'm charging higher. So I list out the time spent going to the store, finding the products and purchasing. So for this campaign specifically, they actually require me to go into the store, find the product and purchase it myself. So to me, of course, this is an added thing because usually for campaigns, the brands ship the product to me directly, so I don't have to worry about finding the right product or spending the time to go to the store to find the product. This campaign specifically required including 3 products in this post. So this limits the type of post I can do creatively and also looks less organic. So again, because this campaign is requiring me to include all 3 products in one post, this is obviously make it look more like an advertisement. The requirement of post 1 being in store, thus being less organic and again creatively limiting. Requirement of taking post 2 indoors, thus being creatively limiting. The carousel requirement in post 3, thus requiring more time shooting and editing. So this is one that I really want to call because a lot of times this gets missed by bloggers, and then I think that they kind of get the short end of the stick, is that sometimes a brand may require 1 in-feed post, but they're requiring a carousel post. So when it's a carousel post, that means that there's more than 1 photo that they want in the post. So to me, this actually almost doubles the amount of time because now I'm providing 2 pictures to the brand. So that's 2 photos that I'm shooting and editing and then sending to the brand for review. So this is definitely something that I keep in mind, and if I see the word carousel post, I for sure will increase my rates. Rush timeline to submit all 3 posts and stories. In this case, this was a very rushed timeline. I believe the brand had reached out, I want to say like 5 days before the deadline for all the posts of the campaign, which to me, that is like a very rushed deadline because especially for this campaign, I think they required like 3 separate posts and then a bunch of stories, but they wanted everything 5 days from the day they reach out to me, which is doable, but it's just super rushed because typically I like to allocate 2 full weeks to shoot a campaign because I have to schedule time with my photographer, plan out the shoot, etc. And then the last thing is the link in bio requirement for the entire duration of the campaign. So this is another one that for me is a red flag when it comes to increasing my rate, is if the brand wants me to include a specific link and they want me to put it in the link in my bio. So to me, the link in my bio is very valuable real estate because this is where I put the link to a blog post, to my YouTube videos. So this is where I use to drive my Instagram followers to my other channels. So if a brand wants to take this valuable real estate and put their link in bio, especially for the entire duration of the campaign. So in this instance, this campaign lasted 2 weeks. So they wanted the link in bio for the entire 2 weeks. That to me definitely justifies a higher rate because that's essentially preventing me from driving my audience to my blog or my YouTube channels. So that was essentially the email that I wrote to the brand. So as you can see, I kept it very rational, and I find it helpful for negotiation emails to do bullet points. 1, because it seems more professional, and 2, because it's also easier for the reader to digest all the information that you're telling them. I also like bullet points because it just is a very level-headed approach. So everything that I stated were facts versus how I felt. So in this instance, because of all of these campaign requirements, I felt like I had to increase my rate. So what ended up happening for this specific campaign is that the brand actually was able to take off a lot of the requirements that were requiring me to increase my fee. So when it comes to the outcome of a negotiation, for me, it's a successful negotiation. I literally cannot talk. I've said the word negotiation so many times in this video. I feel like I'm going bonkers. But anyways, for me, a successful negotiation is 1, if I was able to increase my fee or get the ideal rate that I want, or 2, if I was able to negotiate down the requirements so that I am happy with my standard fee rather than a higher fee. So in this instance, the latter happened. Wait, is it latter or former? Yes. So in this instance, the latter happened where the brand did not accept my higher fee but did accept my standard fee, but they were willing to take away all the requirements that required me to actually raise my fee in the first place. So for me, this felt like a good compromise because they basically shaved off at least 5 of the requirements that they had originally in the campaign guidelines. So I felt like I could successfully execute this campaign, still keep my creative vision, and still get my standard rate. Now I'm going to pull up a slightly different scenario where I was actually able to negotiate a higher rate because of the specific campaign requirements. So in this specific campaign, this campaign required me to go in the store and take an in-store picture. So in-store photos, I always charge more for because once again, they are creatively limiting. I don't ever shoot my outfit pictures in a store. So when a brand requires an in-store picture, that always makes it look more like an ad and less like something that I would organically post. So I immediately add to my rate. In addition, in this specific instance, the store was actually very, very far from me. So the store was actually in Staten Island and I live in Brooklyn. So to me, this is not a standard campaign because typically in-store campaigns might be in Manhattan, sometimes they're in Brooklyn, but Staten Island to me is like could essentially be Long Island for as far as I know. So what I did before I actually even responded back to the initial campaign offer, I looked up how far the store was from my house. So once again, like I mentioned, the most powerful thing you can do to your advantage is to fully understand everything that's going to be required of you for this campaign and how much time is going to be required before you respond back to the brand. So I went ahead and put it in Google Maps and I saw that it would take me an hour and a half by public transportation and the Staten Island ferry to get to my house to the store, and that's one way. So both ways, that would be 3 hours. So that's already 3 additional hours on top of my time spent for this campaign. So then what I did is I then actually looked at Uber and I saw that Uber only takes 30 minutes. But obviously Uber costs money, and I actually saw that the rate for a standard Uber ride to the store in Staten Island was $50 each way. So then I actually wrote this in the email to the brand. So I explained them to that I just looked at the address and it's in Staten Island. And from where I live in Brooklyn, it looks like it would take an hour and 15 minutes each way to get there and back. But it would only take 25 minutes by Uber/Lyft. So I would love if the rate could also account for the cost of Uber, which would be $50 each way, so $100 total. So here I'm asking for an additional $100 to cover the cost of the transportation. But they could probably just come back and say, well, why can't you just take public transportation? So then I'm also further explaining, otherwise the time it would take for the collaboration increases exponentially, as the transportation would take 3 hours in total given it's in Staten Island. So here I'm basically telling them that either way my rate needs to be higher, either by covering the cost of my Uber/Lyft or by covering the additional 3 hours I need to spend in transportation. So in this instance, I was successful and the brand actually immediately agreed to my increased rate because of the reasons that I listed out. So one of the other things I would look for, and that's often missed, is does the brand actually require you to send more than one photo option for review? So even though, for example, the campaign deliverables might be one Instagram post, sometimes brands put in the requirements, please send 3 photos for review and for us to choose from. So if this isn't a requirement, to me, this is also a reason to increase my rate, because if they're asking for 3 pictures for review, that means that I'm fully editing 3 photos. So when I say fully edit, I mean that I'm prepping 3 pictures to be published on my Instagram post as is. And when it comes to editing, I have a very long and drawn out process from when I actually shoot the picture to what it looks like when it actually goes to my Instagram. So when a brand wants 3 photo options for review, this basically increases my editing time by 3 times. So I would always increase the rate if that's the case. Also, because you then need to make sure that you actually have 3 viable photos that you would post on your Instagram. So usually if it's only one Instagram post and you do the shoot, maybe there's only like 1 or 2 that you absolutely love and would post on your Instagram. And for me, for every Instagram photo I post, I want to make sure that I'm absolutely loving it and 100% happy with it. So when a brand asks for 3 different photo options, that means that all 3 photo options I send them have to be something I absolutely love, because they could pick any one of the 3. So again, for me, this probably leads to increased shooting time because I want to make sure that I'm getting 3 pictures that I absolutely 100% love. Another thing to keep in mind is just to make sure to read all the campaign guidelines. Sometimes brands have specific guidelines such as you can't shoot against a specific type of wall, like no graffiti, even like certain colors. Some brands maybe don't want you to wear jewelry, don't want you to wear certain pieces of clothing. These are all things to keep in mind before giving your rate. Another thing is sometimes brands have a specific location they want you to shoot at, or they don't want you to shoot it indoors, or they only want you to shoot it indoors. These are all things that could compromise your creativity and could compromise the way that you would shoot it. And so these are all reasons for you to increase your rate. Another one to keep in mind is if it actually requires set up on your end. So for example, if you're working with an alcohol brand and they actually want you to make a drink and feature this drink in your photo, this obviously requires more time than if you were just to go out in your outfit and shoot, because now you have to make sure that you're making this drink and you're making it correctly, and this takes time. So that's another thing that I keep in mind as well. Another factor to keep in mind is whether or not the campaign requires other people to be in the shoot. So a lot of times for lifestyle brands, some of the campaigns actually specifically state, please shoot this with a friend, or we want other people to be in the shot so that it seems like, you know, a social setting. So when this is a requirement, I almost always typically increase my rate, because in my mind, now I have to get someone else to be available to be in the shoot. And as I mentioned, I hire a photographer for all my shoots, so I have to plan out all of my shoots in advance. My photographer is very popular. Shout out, by the way, to Ashley Gallerini Photography. She is amazing, but becoming super popular now. And I typically have to book her at least a week in advance. So when it requires someone else to be in the shoot, I now have to coordinate both her availability and my friend's availability, or whoever I'm going to include in this shoot. So this is an added layer of coordination and therefore timing and therefore stress that is not usually in my other shoots. So this is another just factor to consider and another thing that I have to keep in mind for this campaign, which is why I would again increase the rate for this campaign. So bottom line, what I want you guys to take away from this section is just to understand all of the campaign deliverables and requirements, read the fine print, ask for the campaign brief before you give out your rate, ask to make sure that you fully understand the timing, the review requirements, any strange stipulations like having to shoot it at a specific place or shooting with other people, anything like that, because those are all reasons for you to increase your rate, because not all campaigns are created equal. And if there's one thing you guys remember from today's video, it's that not all campaigns are created equal. So every campaign is different. Every campaign has its own unique set of guidelines and stipulations, and therefore your rate should also be different for every campaign. And that concludes section 2 of contract strategy for bloggers. I hope you guys found this section helpful and can use these tips when you're negotiating a contract with a brand. And stay tuned for the last and final section of contract strategy, which is what to do when problems arise. And problems can be anything from needing to do a reshoot, to a brand not responding, even to a brand postponing the contract or canceling the contract. So stay tuned for that video coming out next week. In the meantime, please let me know if you have any questions about today's video in the comment box below. And as always, if you liked what you saw, please give this video a thumbs up as well as a subscribe. And I will see you guys soon in the final video.